True Scary Story 1. The Knock at 2:13 a.m. Outline 1. The beginning of the rain. The rain fell like nails against the windows, sharp and relentless. Sophia, a college student staying alone in her off-campus apartment, curled deeper into the couch. She tried focusing on a mystery novel, but the storm outside seemed hungrier than her book's villains. Every few minutes the power flickered, lights dimming, shadows stretching unnaturally across the walls, as if they too wanted to crawl closer to her. At 2:13 a.m., a knock echoed through her apartment. A sharp, deliberate knock, 3 times. She froze. The front door was at the far end of a narrow hallway, and between her and that door, the lights had just cut out completely. Total darkness, save for faint lightning that flashed in the distance. Her first thought, neighbor needing help. But why so late? And how did they even get into the building? She sat there unmoving, her breath caught in her throat. Another 3 knocks followed, louder this time. Her phone vibrated simultaneously with a notification, but when she checked, there were no messages, no missed calls. Just blank, and then she heard it whispering. Right outside her door, like someone muttering her name. Outline 2. The hallway against better judgment, Sophia decided to check. With her phone flashlight in hand, she inched her way down the hallway. The air felt icy, far colder than seconds ago, as though the storm had crept right inside with her. Each step seemed to echo much louder than normal, like the floorboards betrayed her attempts to be silent. When she neared the door, the whispering stopped. Silence. She exhaled the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Slowly, carefully, she peeked through the peephole. Nothing. Just the dim corridor of her apartment complex stretching into shadows, completely deserted. But when she started to step back, something shifted. The peephole darkened. Something was covering it from the outside. For half a second, all she could make out was the pale outline of an eye staring directly into hers. Lightning cracked outside, illuminating the hallway for a single flash, and in that light, she saw a silhouette standing in her doorway, perfectly still. Outline 3. The voice. Sophia choked back a scream, stumbling backward. She almost dropped her phone, the only source of light she had left. Immediately, the knock started again, this time frantic pounding, shaking the door on its hinges. Then came the voice. A low, rasping whisper, "Let me in, please." It's so cold out here, her mind raced. Was it a stranger? Was someone hurt? But no, the tone wasn't desperate. It was calculated, too calm, like whoever it was enjoyed the fear they were stirring inside her. Sophia yelled, her voice cracking, "I'm calling the police!" The knocking stopped instantly. Complete stillness. No sound but the rain and her hammering heart. She pulled her phone up to actually dial, but as she unlocked the screen, she froze. Every app was gone, the entire screen wiped, replaced by one new notification. Battery 66%, let me in. Her hand trembled so uncontrollably she barely kept hold of the phone. And then, there it was again, whispering, this time from right behind her. Outline 4. The apartment turns. She spun around. Flashlight beam sweeping her living room. Nothing. But the whisper clung to the walls. It felt like it was inside her apartment now. Her TV flickered on by itself, static, filling the silence. Then slowly it began showing live footage of her, from inside her living room. The camera perspective wasn't her phone. It was from the corner of the room, from an angle that should have been impossible. Every nerve in her body screamed to run, but her legs didn't move. The TV screen showed her standing frozen, illuminated only by the glow of the device in her hand. On the feed, slowly, a figure began creeping into frame behind her. Tall, thin, its skin slick and gray like it had been drenched in rain. Its movements were wrong, jerky as though it was learning how to walk. She twisted around with a strangled gasp, nothing behind her. But when she turned back to the TV, the figure was now directly behind her image, and on the screen she could see it smiling. Outline 5, the payoff. The apartment filled with a sudden downpour sound, like rain pouring from the ceiling, but no water was there. Just noise, like she was submerged under storm clouds. Her phone vibrated violently, buzzing to the point it almost slipped from her grip. When the screen lit up, there was a video call incoming. The caller ID? Her own number. Hands shaking, she accepted, unable to stop herself. The screen revealed her apartment, filmed from that impossibly high angle again. Thunder roared outside. With each flash of lightning, the figure in the video appeared closer to her, though in the real apartment she saw nothing. It was 2 feet away on the screen. Then one. Then lightning struck, plunging the whole building into blackout. Her own scream was the last thing anyone heard. The neighbors swore they found her apartment door wide open the next morning, rain-slick footprints leading inside. But Sophia was gone. Gone without a trace, except for her phone lying in the center of the floor. On the black screen, it still glowed faintly with words that shouldn't have been there. Thanks for letting me in. True Scary Story 2, The Other Room Outline. 1. The Lonely Shift. The rain hammered steadily against the glass walls of the small office where Malik worked as an overnight security guard. His building wasn't flashy, just an outdated high-rise mostly empty at night, except for humming vending machines and the dull glow of emergency lights. Malik enjoyed these shifts. Fewer people meant fewer problems. He leaned back in his chair, listening as thunder cracked like falling trees outside, shaking the windows slightly. Then, through the tangled noise of rain and outside wind, a sound rose that didn't fit, a faint rhythmic tapping. It wasn't from the storm. No, this came from inside the building. 3 taps paused 3 more. It echoed faintly through the hall on the 6th floor, just a level above where he sat at his desk. Malik frowned, leaning forward toward the security monitors. Most were black and white, grainy and lagging with static. He cycled through each camera, lobby, stairwell, elevators. At first, nothing. Then his stomach dipped. Camera 6B, a light overhead flickering above a doorway. Clear as day, he saw it. The door to room 608, a floor he knew had been vacant for nearly 2 years, was slowly inching open and shut. Back and forth, even though no one should have keys to it. The tapping grew louder in his ears, though he wasn't even up there. He could feel the hairs on his arm lift, his instincts begging him not to check it. Yet as head of security, his duty was to make sure. Malik grabbed his flashlight. As he walked into the elevator, lightning flashed outside the building, and in that white-hot reflection across the CCTV screen, he swore he saw something standing in the half-open doorway. It wasn't moving, just waiting. Outline 2, the empty floor. The elevator ride dragged like a nightmare, each floor dinging louder than usual over the drone of storm winds. Malik's flashlight beam trembled as the doors slid open. The 6th floor greeted him with stale, damp air, as if the rain had somehow seeped into this exact hallway. The corridor was long, lined with vacant office doors covered in dust and shadows. At the end of the hall stood room 608. Its door was nudged open just enough to expose darkness beyond. The tapping had stopped. Maintenance didn't report anything here, Malik muttered under his breath, partly to remind himself of reality, partly just to break the silence. His boots echoed off the tile as he proceeded carefully. Halfway down, his radio crackled by itself, a burst of static that warped horribly before clear words formed. "Go home." He froze. His pulse hammered harder than the rain. "Who said that?" His radio fizzled, then spat out another sound, not words this time. Just a sharp inhale. As though someone was breathing directly into the transmitter, Malik forced himself to keep moving, step by shaky step. He reached the door, placed his hand against it, and pushed. The hinges groaned like they hadn't been touched in years. The smell hit him first, rotten, damp, metallic, like something had spoiled inside that room long, long ago. With hesitation, he pointed his flashlight into the void. The beam spread over old cubicles, flipped chairs, and broken ceiling tiles scattered like bones. And then something moved. Just far enough in the beam's edge to register, a figure hunched in the corner, motionless, facing the wall. The sound returned. Tap, 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 but this time it wasn't wood. The tap was wet, muffled, like nails hitting flesh. Outline 3, the thing in the corner. His chest tightened. The figure didn't react to the beam of light, didn't turn around at all. Just stayed crouched in that unnatural bend. Malik's brain screamed at him to retreat, but something twisted inside, part icy curiosity, part professional duty. Slowly he whispered, "Sir, are you okay?" The figure shuddered once, shoulders rising unnaturally high, then falling, a motion closer to spasm than normal breathing. Malik took another step, his flashlight beam jittering with his unsteady hand. He could now see the back of its head, Stringy, wet hair plastered against skin that looked grey, almost waxen. The tapping grew sharper now. He realized the noise wasn't coming from the figure, but from something beside it. The beam quivered sideways, landing on the wall. There, smeared in the paint, with what looked horribly like blood, was a single sentence, "Still here." And as his light caught the letters, the crouched figure slowly began to stand, bone-cracking, jerky movements as it straightened to impossible height, its head lolling before snapping upward. The face that turned toward him wasn't human. Empty eye sockets sunken too deep, wide smile stretching farther than cheeks should allow. Malik dropped his radio as his blood iced. But before he spun around to run, something else caught his ear in the deafening silence of the storm. Behind the figure, more footsteps, multiple, slow, wet. Approach after approach. From deeper in the office, the crouching thing was not alone. Outline 4. The chase Malik stumbled backward, colliding with the nearest desk, nearly losing grip on his flashlight. The beam swung wildly across the room, illuminating fragments of horror he desperately wished he hadn't seen. Faces flashing between cubicle gaps, pale hands gripping broken partitions, eyes watching him from every dark crevice. Not mannequins, not tricks of imagination. They moved, slow, deliberate, all turning their heads toward him. "Hell no," Malik gasped, bolting for the hallway. His boots slapped hard against the floor as shadows cascaded behind him, the wet air thickening with the smell of rot. The tapping had transformed into something louder, like dozens of feet shuffling behind. Reaching the doorway, he slammed into the hall, sprinting toward the elevator panel. The elevator screamed to life below, like it was already on its way up. Desperation clawed at his throat, but as the elevator chimed, doors slowly prying open, he froze. No empty lift awaited him. Instead, it was filled, completely packed, wall to wall, floor to ceiling, with identical faces. Blank, wide-eyed expressions, all silently staring straight at him. The tapping crescendoed behind him. They were closing in. Malik had no choice but to flee toward the stairwell. Heart pounding, lungs burning. Every corner seemed to echo his terrified breaths. Yet no matter how fast he ran, something was near, too near. Whenever lightning lit the windows, he caught glimpses of figures keeping precise distance, never losing his trail, always watching, and worse, the stairwell reeked as if it led not to fresh air and safety, but somewhere far, far under. Outline 5, the last broadcast. His trembling legs carried him downward. Flight after flight of stairs. Darkness pressed tight. His flashlight flickered with every jolt. Lightning offered quick flashes of shapes too close behind. His radio, left behind earlier, suddenly came alive again, though he no longer had it. The voices seemed to echo directly in the stairwell itself, overlapping whispers chanting his name. "Malik, Malik, Malik, floor 1, safety should have been there." Instead, as he burst through the final door, his senses collapsed in dread. He wasn't anywhere near the lobby. It was still the 6th floor. Room 608's hallway stretched out before him again, but the rain outside the windows had stopped. Absolute silence now. Every door in the hallway stood ajar. From all of them, figures began emerging, hundreds of them, pale and patient, stepping into one endless line as though waiting for him. Their faces didn't change as they all whispered again in one voice, "Still here." The last thing ever recorded of Malik was from his stationary CCTV system. The footage, checked the next morning, showed him sprinting in circles around the 6th floor repeatedly for nearly an hour, screaming at things the camera didn't capture. His flashlight died 53 minutes in. At exactly 3:06 a.m., he stopped in front of room 608, staring directly into the lens, and in the footage, clear as day, his mouth stretched impossibly wide as he whispered, in perfect clarity, "Still here." The police never found his body. Only his empty uniform folded neatly inside room 608. True Scary Story 3, the reflection in the window outline. 1. The blackout. It was one of those nights where the rain seemed endless, hammering the street outside like 100 fingers on glass. Noor lived alone in a modest top-floor apartment, with one long window that stretched almost the length of the living room. Normally, she loved the view. She could watch storms roll in above the city, lightning tearing apart clouds. But tonight, something felt different. At exactly 1:44 a.m., the power went out. The sudden blackout was so total, Noor sat perfectly still, surrounding her body with silence too heavy for comfort. Her phone dimly flickered against her palm, the only glow she could find. She tried to distract herself with music, but somehow her playlists wouldn't load. Just a loading spinner circling and freezing. She sighed, muttering, "Great, perfect night for this." But then she caught movement. Out of pure reflex, her gaze tilted toward the window. Rainwater streaked down noisily, bending the city lights below into distorted, ghostly shapes. But the silhouette that passed in the frame wasn't distorted. It was clear. A tall, lean human outline walked by in the reflection, right behind her couch, slowly enough that she swore she saw shoulders, arms, and unmistakable towering height. Noor spun around instantly, adrenaline blasting through her chest. Living room empty. Her entire small flat completely clear. Only her. She gulped loudly in the dark, forcing out a nervous laugh. "Reflection trick," she whispered, trying to ground herself. But her voice faltered midway because the windows weren't mirrors. They only showed the faint glow of city lights. No reflection strong enough should have existed in them at all. Still gripping her phone, Noor turned back for reassurance. That's when she froze harder. The outline was still there in the glass. Only this time, it wasn't walking. It was standing perfectly still. Facing her, outline too, the breathing. Her body went cold, every muscle tightening into stone. Noor's first instinct was denial. It must have been her imagination paired with poor lighting. She forced her hand to swipe through her phone, desperately raising the brightness to flood the room with some sort of light. But it didn't matter. The silhouette in the window didn't shift at all. If this was only her reflection, why did it seem taller? Suddenly she heard it. Breathing, not hers. A wet, labored inhale rising from somewhere close behind. Thick, rattling exhale that filled her ears. She whipped her head toward the kitchen, then back to the bedroom door. Nothing, empty. And the breathing stopped. Until she risked glancing toward the window again. Silhouette still facing her, but now it had pressed closer to the glass, its head lolling slightly downward, as though it was trying to study her closely. Her own breath hastened until her ribs ached. This wasn't just a trick of glass. She could see just enough detail to sense eyes fixed on hers through an outline that shouldn't even exist. Then, impossibly, she watched faint condensation spread across the inside of the window pane, fog blooming outward, as though some unseen mouth was pressed against it, breathing from the inside. Panic surged as her survival instincts kicked in. Noor grabbed her phone to dial emergency services. She never got the chance. Her phone screen glitched, letters morphing, numbers fuzzing, finally locking on one black screen with garbled white text glowing. It read, "Don't turn around." Her hands trembled so violently she almost dropped it. Something in the silence shifted louder, this time not just breathing. A faint scrape, like fingernails dragging across her floor. Coming closer, she had the urge to look to prove she was imagining things, but deep in her gut, she felt the truth. Someone else was in the apartment. Outline 3. The first look tears welled in her eyes as she sat paralyzed. Every sound magnified. The tap of rain, a loose gutter flapping outside, the distant horn below. But over all these noises was that quiet drag of something moving inside her flat. She whispered to herself again and again, "It's not real. It's not real." Saying it didn't help. The scraping grew louder, until it was just behind her sofa. Against the warning seared into her brain, Noor turned her head. In the dim light of her phone's glow, she caught sight of a shape crouched low, right by the floorboards. Skin that wasn't skin but glistening gray in patches, stretching too thin over long arms. Its fingers, 6 of them, were pressed flat against her wooden floor, dragging lines through the dust as it crawled. Slowly, thoughtfully, its head snapped too quickly to look at her, and in that brief second, their eyes met. There was nothing inside those eyes, just bottomless black. Noor screamed, bolting upright, fumbling for the kitchen knife she kept in a drawer just a few feet away. She yanked it out, hands slippery with sweat, blade reflecting her trembling face. But when she turned back, the living room was empty again. Window bare, floorboards clear. The sound was gone. She inhaled so sharply it hurt, heart trying to regain rhythm. And then her phone buzzed violently once more, jerking her attention. The screen lit up not with text, but with her camera feed facing her with the front lens. Only problem was, it showed 2 people in frame. Her and just behind her shoulder, a stretched shadow grinning into the camera. The room around her was empty, which meant the second image was coming from somewhere else. Or worse, already too close to see. Outline 4. The encounter. With shaking hands, she dropped the phone to the ground, her chest heaving. The sound of it hitting the wood split the silence too loud, echoing longer than it should have. Her knife raised, she backed deeper toward her bedroom. It felt ridiculous, but even corners seemed safer than the endless open space of the living room. The window glass moaned suddenly, as though being dragged inward by suction. Nor whipped her gaze to it, watching as faint handprints, 5, 6, then more, pressed out from the inside of the window, streaking condensation outward. The storm seemed silenced outside, the only sound left being those muffled palms squeaking on glass. Her chest shuddered, heart burning as she tried to remind herself, it's impossible. Nothing's there. You're hallucinating. She squeezed the knife harder, ready to slash anything that moved, but deep down she knew what was happening wasn't in her head, because the foggy shape of her face began pushing through the glass, distorting the pain like warm honey, a stretched skull forcing its way through from the other side. With a sound that scraped her bones, glass cracked and warped until the thing's jaw protruded halfway into her apartment. Its mouth unhinged wider than any scream should allow. A sound rolled out of it, broken, like dozens of recordings played at once. She swore she heard her own voice among them. In terror, Noor bolted into her bedroom and slammed the door, barricading it with a heavy chair. Her breaths came too fast, tears blurring her sight. She grabbed her phone again off the floor. The camera app was still open. On the screen, she wasn't in the bedroom. It showed her clearly, but the angle revealed she was still sitting on the living room couch and, worse yet, the tall shape behind her now leaned much closer in the frame. Whispering right into the back of her ear, outline 5, the payoff, she screamed, throwing the phone down as its screen cracked into shards. The chair against her bedroom door rattled violently, shuddering again and again as though something slammed each time harder. The hinges groaned. Whispers bled into her room from every corner, dozens of voices all pressing against her head at once. Some cried, some laughed. But above them all, one impossibly deep voice repeated, "Turn around." Her eyes watered. She clutched the knife like divine protection, but deep down she understood that no weapon in the world could deter whatever had entered her home. The door splintered suddenly, cracks spreading like black veins. Noor screamed, stabbing blindly toward the sound, nothing but air. Darkness replaced every shape in sight as her ceiling light exploded with a deafening pop. For a moment, everything fell silent again. Deadly silent. She almost believed it was over, until her broken phone buzzed one last time. Through its fractured screen, a single live stream opened automatically, grainy and distorted. The camera showed her own apartment window from the outside, as though someone were standing on the edge of the building. Slowly, shakily, the lens tilted upward until it revealed her window. And there she was on screen, plain as day, silhouetted perfectly against the glass. She wasn't moving, just standing there, staring blankly out over the storm, pale eyes shining through the distortion. When the neighbors found her days later, the apartment was locked from the inside. Knife still on the floor, chair still wedged by her door, but the bedroom was completely empty. No Noor. The only thing left was the awful detail they reported when the rain picked up again that night. Neighbors swore her reflection stood in the window, calmly staring down at them. True Scary Story 4. The Attic Door Outline 1. The old house Imran had never liked storms. Even in his childhood, thunder made him feel small, as if the sky itself was warning him to stay in place. Now, as a grown man living alone in his late grandparents' creaky old house, the sound of rain slapping against ancient windows unnerved him more than usual. The house held years of dust, history layered in the walls, and a heaviness that never seemed to lift. Yet he had inherited it, and so it was his to live in. He tolerated the groans of wood beneath his steps, the occasional drip of unseen leaks, and that strange draft you can't completely place. On this night, however, long after midnight as the downpour reached its angriest, he heard a noise that prickled his skin cold. Not thunder, not wind, a deliberate dragging thump from above his bedroom ceiling. The attic. He froze, afraid to breathe. The attic had always unsettled him. Old houses had memories, and the one room he avoided was that sealed, cobwebbed space with its half-sized door in the hallway ceiling. He had never gone up there in years of staying. But as another low, dragging thump echoed, followed by what sounded disturbingly like footsteps pacing, Imran's chest tightened. The noise was too heavy, too purposeful, like someone was living in the forgotten rafters. He tried rationalizing. Old beams creaking in rain, maybe a raccoon, maybe the storm inflating wood. But then came the next sound, a loud metallic clang, like a latch being forced open inside the attic. In the silence afterward, a soft creak followed, slowly, achingly. The sound of the attic door in the hallway pulling down on its own. The storm outside masked everything, but Imran swore. Someone had just come down from above outline 2. The hallway for minutes he didn't move, just lay there in bed staring at his bedroom door. The rain kept pounding outside, but now Imran could only hear one thing. The faint, unnatural groan of the attic ladder unfolding into the hallway. He gripped his phone tightly, debating whether to call anyone, but who? It would sound insane. Someone's in the attic of my dead grandparents' home. And even if the police came, what would they find? Empty dust and insulation. Yet the thick tension curled deep in his gut told him another truth. He was not alone right now. Summoning shaky courage, Imran rose from bed, barefoot tiptoeing to the crack of his doorframe. The hallway was dark, blanketed in silent shadows, broken only when lightning illuminated pale walls with brief flashes. He slowly pushed the door open wider. There it was. The ladder hung fully extended from the ceiling hatch. Its uneven wood was warped with dampness, dripping faintly onto the hallway carpet, as if drawn down by more than gravity. The hatch itself swayed slightly, as though disturbed just moments earlier. His throat dried. He whispered to himself, "Nope, no way." He forced the idea of rational causes. Maybe the weight of rain unlocked the latch. But even as the thought softened him, a wet drip landed squarely on his arm, warm. He jerked back, lifting his phone light upward. The beam hit the hatch door above. Water leaked around it, yes, but trickling mixed with another darker liquid. Something thicker. Along the hatch edges, lines of deep crimson streaked downward. Thunder cracked again, and in its roar, he thought he heard a faint giggle from inside the attic. Sharp, eager, and chillingly human. Outline 3. What waited above, Imran didn't want to go near it, but leaving the ladder extended into his hallway terrified him more. He decided to fold it back up, to shove it closed if only to force a barrier between him and whatever might be lurking above. Step by quivering step, he approached the ladder. The air around it felt colder, even though the rest of the house sweltered humid from storm heat. He steadied his hand, reaching for it, when something fell from above. A small object clinked onto the carpet. His flashlight beam caught it immediately, a rusted ring with the band bent and corroded, wet with age and something unnatural. His pulse skipped painfully. It was his grandmother's wedding ring, one she'd been buried with over a decade ago. He staggered backward, slamming into the wall. Up in the darkness of the attic, something shifted again. Not raccoon scratches, not creaking. Something heavy dragged across boards, inching closer to the open hatch. The air filled with wet sucking sounds, as if bare feet pulled free from thick mud with each step. Then, slow and deliberate, a pale hand extended down through the hatch opening. Its fingers were far too long, nails cracked and swollen, veins like black wires under stretched skin. The hand gripped a rung of the ladder, steadying itself. Another hand emerged. Imran's breathing spiraled out of control. He stumbled to his bedroom, slamming the door and pressing his whole weight against it, while his chest convulsed in panic. Silence at first, just rain rattling louder than his heartbeat, and then came the thud of feet, one after another impossibly slow, descending the ladder. Whoever, whatever, was in the attic before, was now in the house with him. Outline 4. The pursuit, Imran heard the steps reaching the hallway floor. Whatever had come down was now standing outside his room. His back pressed against the door, knife from the bedside clenched tight in his sweaty hand. Then came the knock. Deliberate, slow. 3 strikes on the wood right against his back. He bit down hard on his lip. Smothering a scream, the knock repeated, followed by dragging across the door, nails scratching down, whispering against the wood like sandpaper. He could feel each vibration through his spine. Then silence. Dead quiet. He dared not move. 10 seconds, 20. a full minute stretching like a lifetime, and then it spoke. A clear, raspy voice slurring words from beyond the door. "Imran, come upstairs. We've been waiting for you." His grip on the knife faltered. "We? Who was we?" Before he could react, the doorknob twitched, turned slightly one way, then back. Imran jolted to wedge his feet against it. But then, impossibly, the doorknob turned from their side, growing hotter, screaming metal until it snapped clean off in his hand. The door burst just an inch, revealing a void darker than any hallway could contain. He slammed it shut, leaning desperately. With one final effort, he shoved a dresser in front. Breathing heavy, body shaking, he slid down into the corner. His phone lit briefly. A new message. No number. It displayed a single photo. His bedroom, as taken from above the attic. In the picture, him in his corner, holding the knife exactly as he was now. Outline 5. The final descent. His heart stopped. He dropped the phone, staring up at the ceiling in dread-soaked disbelief. Above him, he heard shifting. Quick, aggressive movements, as though whatever was in the attic scuttled violently. Crawling right above where he sat, the boards groaned under its force, vibrating dust loose from cracks. "Not real," he whispered over and over again. "Not real." The dresser blocking the door rattled just once violently. Then silence again. But what froze him deeper was what came next. Small tapping from directly inside his walls, from everywhere at once. Closet, ceiling, floor. Surrounding him, enclosing him. Whispering like many voices, soft but unanimous. "Come up, come up, come up." The ceiling bulb above his bed popped, plunging him into blackness. When the next flash of lightning sparked outside, he swore he saw many pale hands pressing through the ceiling plaster, clawing downward toward him like insects pouring from a hive. He roared, pure terror forcing his body. Knife raised, he swung blindly as dust rained down and boards cracked. And then, nothing, utter dark. He didn't remember falling unconscious, but he awoke hours later at sunrise. Sunlight filtered gently through his curtains into a calm, ordinary room. The dresser was still wedged against the door. His knife lay in his lap. Had he hallucinated it all? Unsteady, he breathed relief, until he looked up. The attic ladder was extended again, fully down into the room. At its base lay rows of footprints, soaked in black water, leading directly to where he sat, and carved into his floorboards. Just beside him were words gouged violently deep. "Next time, you don't get to wake up." True Scary Story 5. The voice on the line outline 1. The wrong number. The rain hammered harder than ever that evening, hammering across rooftops like thousands of nails driven at once. Sarah sat curled up on her couch, tea steaming in her hand as she tried to distract herself with the hum of her laptop. The storm outside was violent, the kind that made entire neighborhoods feel swallowed by a thick blackness. Her phone buzzed suddenly on the coffee table. Strange, an unknown number. She hesitated before answering, convincing herself it might be important. When she did, silence stretched across the line. Heavy silence, so complete she could hear the faint buzz of static mixed with the storm. "Hello?" she asked, voice cautious. The silence broke with faint breathing, long, labored, wet, as if drawn from lungs drenched in water. She flinched, pulling the phone back from her ear. Unease prickled her spine. She wanted to hang up. Just as her thumb brushed the button, a low whisper finally crackled through. A man's voice, calm, too calm. "I can see you." Her tea rattled in her hand before spilling hot across her blanket. Furiously, she hung up, tossing the phone a foot away from her. Her pulse drummed louder than the storm. Who had her number? How could they claim to see her? Seconds later, her phone lit with another call. Same unknown number. Thunder boomed outside, rattling the glass panes of her windows as if reacting to it. She didn't answer. But this time, a voicemail recorded instantly, the notification ding echoing through her silent room. Fear battling reason, she pressed play. Through the hiss and static, she heard her own voice scream. Her own scream. A recording from nowhere. Her throat tightened into panic because she hadn't screamed. Not yet, but she would. Outline 2. The house grows strange. Sarah's body trembled as she set her phone aside like venom. Every instinct told her to throw it out the window and never, ever answer again. But paranoia sank its teeth deeper into her. Someone was toying with her. Someone outside in the storm, maybe watching from a window. Gathering courage she didn't feel, she crept across her apartment to yank the curtains shut. As she pulled them, she swore in the reflection of the glass she saw another shape standing just behind her, looming. She whipped around. Empty room. Her phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. She didn't dare listen. Instead, she opened her contacts to block the number, but there was something wrong. Her contact list wasn't hers anymore. Every saved name, family, old friends, co-workers was gone, replaced by hundreds of duplicates of a single contact. Sarah, hundreds. Thousands of entries, all of them her own name. She shut the phone in a panic, heart hammering. The power flickered, then died. Her apartment fell into total darkness, except for the dim glow of her half-drained phone. Rain lashed harder against the windows, rhythmic, almost like knocking. The buzz came again. A text this time. Hands shaking, she opened it. From Sarah, saved contact. Message, pick up or I'll come inside. Her mouth went dry. Knife-sharp fear embedded in her spine. She turned off her phone, flinging it onto the couch, as another knock did sound, not against the glass, but at her door. A gentle tap-tap-tap in 3 cold knocks, then silence. Rain swallowing everything again. Outline 3. The silent neighbor. Sarah's mind unraveled between fight or flight. She chose survival, grabbing her jacket, shoving her keys into her pocket. Storm or not, she would leave her apartment and call for help at her neighbor's door. She cracked open her own door, but the hallway swallowed her in shadows. Lightning flickered faintly through the far stairwell window. For a moment she thought she saw wet footprints trailing along the hallway carpet. Bare, human. She shut her eyes hard, muttering prayers. Get to the neighbor. Just get there. Steeling herself, she rushed toward Mrs. Khan's flat across the way and banged hard, begging, Please, open up. It's me, Sarah. The door creaked open with agonizing slowness. At first, relief rushed her veins, until she noticed the darkness inside. No light, no TV glow, just endless shadow. Mrs. Khan, she whispered. Then a phone rang from within, shrill, jagged, but not hers. An old rotary chime echoed from inside the flat, a sound Sarah had never once heard living here. And then her neighbor's voice answered in the shadows beyond the door. Too calm, too deliberate. The exact same tone from the unknown calls earlier. I can see you. Sarah, she screamed, bolting down the hallway back toward her own apartment, slamming herself inside again, bolting the locks as rain crashed louder outside. Heartbreaking realization set in. It wasn't a stranger stalking her through windows. It was already in her building, already in her life. Outline 4, the calls multiply. She stumbled in, her hand shaking as she dared pick up her phone again. The screen shouldn't have been on. It was off when she threw it, but now it glowed impossibly bright. Messages lined up in notification rows, from Sarah, all repeating the same words. Let me answer. She dropped the device, backing away. It vibrated so violently it fell face down on the floor. The sound built into a mechanical buzzing that filled the room like a swarm of insects, and then her landline rang. She didn't even have a landline. Yet the deaf, shrill ring filled her ears, pulsing. Against all sense, she lifted the receiver from nowhere. Her trembling hand shocked that it even existed on her wall. No static. No delay. Just her own voice, clear, panicked, screaming into her ear space. But behind her scream, louder than before, another one overlapped. A deep, wet, yawning breath. Then calmly layered over. That man's voice whispering with assurance, You're not on the line. You're in the line. The silence cut immediately after. The receiver in her hand dissolved into dead air, phone still buzzing violently on the floor. Lights flickering in impossible rhythm with it. Every ring like a heartbeat out of sync. In that distorted hum, she realized something horrifying. If she didn't answer again, whoever was on the other side would come in person. And as she stared across the room, the handle on her door wavered. Turned slowly, metal screeching through the storm. Outline 5, the final answer, her entire body locked, gripping the knife from her kitchen as final defense. The door handle turned fully now, creaking, though her lock held firm. She picked up the phone from the floor against her survival. Instinct. Answering it would mean acknowledging. Something not human, but not answering, may mean facing it physically. She lifted the call to her ear-dead silence. Her pulse thundered. She nearly whispered before her ears froze. In the stillness, she heard her own apartment sounds played back, a delayed loop. Furniture creaking. Footsteps. Every breath she had taken in the last 30 minutes replaying into her ear. until a new sound joined. The call played her voice, her own voice whispering, "Sarah, open the door." The line cut instantly. The lock on her apartment snapped loud like a gun. Metal split. The door eased inward inch by inch, stormlight flashing across the threshold. She lifted her knife. The door pushed open wider, and there, framed perfectly in the glow of lightning through the rain, stood herself, her exact self, drenched in water and darker stains, holding her own phone to her ear, face slack and pale as death. She whispered the final words Sarah would ever hear. "I told you I could see you." The lights went out again with the slam of the storm. Silence swallowed everything. The next morning, the apartment was discovered fully locked from inside. No Sarah, no sign of struggle, only a single phone lying on the couch, its cracked screen glowing faintly. It displayed hundreds of saved voicemails under the single name, Sarah. All of them were screams.